Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Weekly Waypoint. Today we are playing Mario Golf because I am in my 30s and it's about time that I succumb to the luring cool of golf. Except I'll only ever do it in like video games. Because real golf is far too difficult. Fake golf in Mario Land, that's much easier. So I don't have any history with this game, apart from I played it a little bit about a week ago with my friend, and had a pretty great time actually. Turns out Mario Golf is fun. Who knew? You may notice I'm not playing as a Mario character, although I am playing against a Mario character, that being Luigi, and that's because in this game you start out with 4 characters, 2 of which are original characters in this game, and I think the other 2 are like Princess Peach and maybe Daisy. And I decided to go for this lady, and the idea is if you beat a character in a round of golf, then you get to unlock them to play as them. So I am attempting to unlock Luigi today, and this is not my first time attempting to unlock Luigi. I don't know if this game is meant to be difficult, but it's a challenge. But yeah, I don't have a history with golf games in the past. I don't have a history with golf in general. But I figured since it was on NSO, it was worth checking out, and I've become slightly addicted, if I'm being honest. Initially, the controls were pretty hard to get my head around, and it doesn't help that I'm playing this on NSO on a normal Switch controller, so, you know, it's a little bit weird with the button mapping. Like, if you want to, like, view a different angle, like, kind of go into spectator mode to see like what I'm doing now, where the ball's gonna go, you have to press like the directional pad buttons, and they're kind of mapped to like the right analog stick, but only certain directions or something. So it's definitely a little weird, but when you get your head around it, it's a pretty good time. But as an inexperienced virtual golfer, there will be some flubs, there will be some whiffs, and I hope you enjoy watching me struggle, because boy did I struggle. But yeah, much like Mario Tennis, I was surprised to find how much I enjoyed this original Mario sports game, and it made me realize I would probably enjoy a modern Mario sports game if I ever grabbed one, so I'll keep an eye out to see if any physical editions ever go on offer, but I doubt they ever will on the eShop for anything significant. And no matter how much I enjoy playing it, you know, I don't see myself sinking 60 quid into it, you know what I mean? Anyway, it's been quite a busy week in the world of video games and video game news, and I don't always cover video game news. This is very much like a little journal kind of a show, like what did I get up to this week, and we will do that as well. But I'd like to talk about some topics in the news this week, if that's alright with you. I hope it is, because I've already recorded and published this video from your point of view, and you have no agency over the past, so without further ado, the 3 major gaming companies had 3 major controversies this week, some of which were more controversial than others, some of which perhaps shouldn't have been the most controversial thing out of the 3 of them, such as... and I've touched on this a little bit already in the video I released earlier this week, but Nintendo have announced that on Pokemon Day this year, which I'm so excited for in terms of news, they are releasing Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green onto the eShop for a whopping £17.99, or 20 of your American funny money. And I'm not going to go over all of it because it's a few days old by now and you've probably heard it talk to death. Yes, it should have been more than a bare bones port, which is what this is, except it seems like they're also adding home functionality, which adds some value to it in my opinion. It's an unpopular opinion, I guess, but I don't think that it's an unreasonable price, really. Maybe this is just because my preconceptions were altered by the supposed leak about it being sold for $30 on the eShop before it was actually announced. So my initial reaction was, oh, it's cheaper than I thought it was, nice. But at the end of the day, unless you're obtaining this video game illegally, it's extremely expensive to get your hands on secondhand, and there's no other way to do it. So I think this is a pretty fair price. It's certainly not the most effort they could have put into the re-release of a beloved game in the franchise, but their philosophy seems to be it's already a remake, and it is the remake of Red and Blue and Green and all that, and so we don't need to tinker with it at all. But, you know, I would have liked to see a official randomizer or Nuzlocke mode. I think it would be really cool if they did like an official Nuzlocke mode, right? So you can't, there's no honor rules, it's like coded into the game, but it has to be this certain way. Maybe it doesn't have to be Nuzlocke as Nuzlocke is, but like a certain kind of challenge mode like that. And then Pokemon Home transfer functionality is locked until you beat the Elite Four, and then when you do transfer those Pokemon, they have like, you know how like in Scarlet and Violet, Pokemon can have marks, like the mightiest marks, to showcase that you got them in like a 7-star raid, which was really difficult? Yeah, give them like a Nuzlocke mark or something, and I think that could be a really fun thing that would incentivize a lot of players to pick something like this up. You know, like, there are so many things they could have done. They could have added proper widescreen support to it, or they could have gone all out and done like a HD 2D mode for it. I don't know. And this is pure copium talking, but you never know. They might announce some more stuff on Pokemon Day for this game. And the only reason I say that is because while I initially had the information about Pokemon Home functionality in the description of the games, they quickly removed it, which makes me think they're going to announce that, which makes me think that they saved some features of this port to announce on Pokemon Day. It's very weird and it's very unprecedented, so it's probably not going to happen, but there's a chance that there could be more to this than meets the eye. Why is there now a car that just transformed into a robot looking at me? But you know, I'm not someone with the most financial means in the world, but I'm more than willing to pay $17.99 for an official version of Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green on my Switch. I honestly think this is a little overblown. And the fact that it's the main gaming controversy I've been seeing on my feeds this week is wild considering what the other two are doing. So first of all, speaking of remakes, remasters and ports, Sony just killed their Bluepoint studio that they acquired a few years ago, who are the devs who made the Shadow of the Colossus and Demon's Soul remakes alongside a bunch of remasters around the PS3, PS4 era. And it's just the biggest, most obvious public-facing mismanagement fumble in recent times, I feel like, to have this gaming studio who are so good at what they do, and then you acquire them, and then all of a sudden nothing's coming out of them for ages, and then you just kill the studio, like, without even releasing anything from them. It's so hard for me to talk about this stuff, because obviously I'm very aware that I have the perspective of a consumer, right? I don't have the business mindset. It's hard for me to fathom why this outcome would occur. It's hard for me to fathom the idea of anyone getting into the games industry without wanting to make art happen and actively going out of your way to destroy the livelihoods of artists because you couldn't make a quick buck out of them. That's just not a mindset I can understand having. And many people have pointed out, like, there were so many easy wins, just put them on a Bloodborne remake or even a remaster. There are so many highly demanded, fan-requested things that seemingly would be quite easy to get done, especially with a talented studio like Bluepoint at your beck and call. But for whatever reason, it's just not the case. And with stuff like this, I go back to you think you do but you don't, like the World of Warcraft Classic guy, right, who was like, no one actually wants to play Classic, and then everyone proved him wrong. In fact, we've just had this again recently with an interview from Bruce Nesmith, who worked with Bethesda for 17 years in a pretty high position, who said, oh, people think they want Morrowind, but they really don't. And it's just like this astonishing out of touch mindset. Like, it's so obvious that these high up people do not care to be in a discussion with the people who actually play the video games that they publish, and they just have these massive egos, or they must do, and just believe that they know what's right and what's gonna make money. And it's just, it's killing the industry at this point. Killing might be hyperbole, it's severely harming the industry. And I just feel like the older I get, the longer I live, or at least the longer this particular society ages, the further and further the gap between the people who want things and the people who provide them grows, in terms of, like, just what we expect and what we want from the world. It's just baffling. And then the biggest news of the week. So I've talked a lot about how Microsoft lost me last year with, their changing direction in Xbox, and, they're embracing AI and all this stuff. They lost me to the point where I haven't turned on my Series S in many months, and I cancelled my Game Pass and I realised I was happier without it and all this stuff. It wasn't entirely cancellation out of protest, because I was already being like, I'm not valuing the games I play on Game Pass, especially if they're like story-driven single-player RPG games. But it was partially just to be like, they just kept doing things that just made it feel gross to be, you know, rewarding them and giving them my business. Even if it is a drop in the bucket, from my perspective, I'm someone who has the ability to make a decision as to whether I'm funding their values or not, and their values just got scummier and scummier. And this week, it turns out Microsoft not only lost me, but it also lost Phil Spencer and Sarah Bond. And the wildest thing about this to me, and maybe this is just my feeds, because I did check in with some friends and they said they saw people talking about this. The news broke about Phil Spencer and Sarah Bond leaving Xbox and the CEO changing, and I didn't see anything about it. I didn't hear a peep about that headline until 19 hours after it broke. And you might be like, yeah, that's not very long. In terms of news, that's seismic, it's ancient. And I think it really speaks to just this ambivalence towards Xbox in general from a wider audience than just me. I feel like a few years ago, this would have been all anyone was talking about. Like, remember when Microsoft acquired Bethesda and acquired Blizzard? Like, that was the main gaming news of a week that anyone would talk about, and it would be all over everything, everywhere. But this, I didn't see it for like a day after it happened. It's insane. But maybe that's a subjective experience, and it's just a result of me stepping away from the Xbox ecosystem. But yeah, Phil Spencer and Sarah Bond leaving Microsoft is seismic, because I mean, I don't really need to explain it to you, right? Like, what they've done there and what their roles were. And some people are celebrating it because they haven't enjoyed the "this is an Xbox" movement, where they're stepping away from hardware and trying to put their games on all consoles and stuff like this. I don't disagree with the idea of putting games on all consoles. I quite recently did say that I actually think exclusives are mostly bad, but at least for consumers. It's a good business strategy, but it's not great for consumers, and I think it's kind of cringe when people get behind them and cheer them on. At the same time though, yeah, I think Xbox has broadly lost its identity by divesting its games across other platforms. I cannot see a reason to own an Xbox in this day and age, and I'm sure that will change going forwards with this new CEO's particular philosophies. Someone complained about this on X, and they replied to them with, "Hear you. This is Asha Sharma, the new CEO of Xbox, who was previously the head of an AI division." Oh no. And she has gone on to say that they do not wish to have soulless AI slop, her words, in their games. And I don't think any of us believe her. She hit up Twitter to outline her three main goals as the CEO of Xbox, or her three main commitments. 1, great games. Crazy. That's unprecedented. Never heard of that idea. 2, return of Xbox. Whatever that means. 3, future of play. Which is corporate speak. And then Major Nelson himself, who doesn't work there anymore and hasn't for a while, replied to her with, "That's a great start. Keep that in mind as you begin to build out your plan. If I may be so bold, let me add one more. 4, partner with the community." To which she replied, "You got it. Thanks, Major." Not inspiring me with confidence there. What's that? Oh, right, the community, from the old community manager guy who felt the need to publicly remind me to care about the community. And I was like, right, yeah, that, got it. Okay, sure. And I don't know, just the way that she's been responding to people as well. Maybe this is just me picking at weeds here now, but she's so like, you know, she hardly uses any words, whereas Phil Spencer gave like these very transparent, like wordy replies and like statements on philosophy and their mission plan and stuff. As corporate as that was, it was very transparent for a CEO. She seems to just be giving like 3 or 4 word replies and replying to certain people who are like, "Xbox isn't what it used to be, it's all gone to shit, you gotta fix it." And she's like, "Hear you." I don't know, that just gives off a weird vibe. Am I the only one? I don't think I'm the only one. So yeah, unless, you know, prove me wrong, I guess, but I'm pretty sure Xbox is on its way out. I'm pretty sure it's over. and I'm pretty sure we're looking at a future where we only have two main competitors in the PlayStation and Nintendo, which is not good for anyone, by the way. The less competition there is, the more opportunity there is for these businesses to employ awful practices to scam their consumers out of more and more money. The less competition there is, the more game development standards will be allowed to fall because there's nobody else combating for those sales. And yes, that means relying on generative AI for cheaper game development with less soul and quality in it. So despite being firmly out of the Xbox camp, I am not cheering for its downfall. I want them to do better, and they are now doing substantially worse. But you know, I guess we have to pay 18 quid to play an old Pokemon game if we want to. That's our choice, but they're charging that for it, and that's the biggest, most controversial gaming news of the week. Okay, everyone, sure. Whatever you say. Also, if you go and read the emails that everyone put out, it's really telling how Satya Nadella doesn't even mention Cerebon's departure. He waxes lyrical about Phil Spencer being amazing, and they had this plan since last year, except if they did, then why have we not been introduced to this CEO sooner and all this stuff? It kind of smells a bit like bollocks. But not a word of Sarah Bond, no email from Sarah Bond, nothing on her socials. It really doesn't seem like it was amicable, which, to be honest, just makes me think better of Phil Spencer and Sarah Bond. You get the impression that, you know, like, while obviously they had to toe the line and agree with everything that was going on in Microsoft, they were trying to keep it right. Like, they were trying to keep going, and you know that everything is an Xbox thing is definitely Phil Spencer, but as far as keeping AI out of games and stuff, maybe, I don't know, I'm projecting here. I don't know what choices these individuals made. We probably won't know for a very long time, but the impression I get is that they were probably on our side as much as people in those positions ever could be, and it's probably bad for us that they've now gone. So I guess all that to say, I'm feeling better than ever about my decision to get a Switch 2 and step away from Xbox, but I'm not foolish enough to think that this won't still impact me in some way. Speaking of which then, shall we hook a left out of this doom and gloom and talk about what I've been playing this week? Because it's very much been a Switch 2 kind of a week. Boy, do I feel bad for anyone who's been following this channel for a while who doesn't care about the Nintendo side of gaming, but that's where we're at right now. So thanks for hanging around. And I will surely be talking about other... Actually, no, I do have a non-Nintendo video game to talk about. What the hell am I talking about? I returned to Final Fantasy XIV this week. More on that later. As far as the Switch side of things goes, though, I have been playing mostly Pokemon games, because this upcoming Pokemon Presents, and if I'm being honest, the upcoming Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green ports, have me really excited and in the mood to play some gosh dang Pokemans. I mean, first of all, I have been continuing to play Monster Hunter Stories. I'm still really enjoying that game. I can't believe people recommend skipping to 2, because 1 is so cozy. It's obviously a 3DS game, and it's obviously limited in terms of graphics, and it's not the craziest story in the world and all that, but it's just an absolutely solid game, and I would recommend it. At least on sale. I don't know what full price is. Maybe even full price, though. I don't know, as long as you know what you're getting yourself into. But yes, this week, I have been playing Pokemon Violet, and I've been exploring the endgame for the first time, really. I don't own the DLC yet, although I foresee that changing fairly soon. So I've been... Well, I was unlocking the Black Terror raids, which, for those of you who don't know, just basically means the hardest PvE content in the game as far as I'm aware in terms of raids. And it's where they usually put, like, their event Pokemon, so, like... for instance, last week we had, I mentioned it when I was talking about putting marks on Pokemon, but last week we had a Mighty Feraligatr raid, which meant fighting against a level, I think it's like 85 or something, Feraligatr, which was a Dark Terror type, and was very, very difficult. The point of these level difficulty of raids is, if you just group up with random strangers to take this thing down, you've got to get extremely lucky and know what you're doing, or it's not gonna work out well for you. But I had to unlock the things first, and to do that I had to go and beat all the gym leaders again, and I had to go do this little Ace tournament thing. So while I had already beaten Pokemon Violet, I can now say I've super beaten Pokemon Violet, and I am in the end game now. And I should say that last generation with Pokemon Sword and Shield, which introduced the concept of raids, that was the first end game in a Pokemon game I really cared about, because raids just really appeal to me. They're still about fighting Pokemon and collecting Pokemon, and it's just an extension of the base gameplay, which I've never seen in the end game before, and it just really clicks with me. I've never really cared about the Battle Tower or Frontier or whatever it's called. I've never really cared about online tournaments and stuff. For me, it's all about collecting, but still, like, having a worthwhile PvE challenge in doing so, and that's what this is. Now, I might prefer Dynamax raids over Terra raids. I think in trying to solve how slow Dynamax raids were, the Terra raids just ended up being too chaotic, and also the netcode is absolutely abysmal. And I also feel like in terms of difficulty, you're less likely to find success just by chaining random raids which are available for you to tackle, which can be quite frustrating when you lose too many in a row and it's not necessarily your fault. Or in my case, a lot of the time it is my fault, because I've gone, oh okay, this Pokemon has this Terra type, I know what will counter that, and then we load in and I go, wait, shit, their base type still applies in terms of the moves they're gonna have that are super effective against me, and I'm really weak to this Pokemon. Shit, I've just doomed us all. I'm trying to get better about that. But to get back to this Mighty Feraligatr 7-star raid, what I really enjoyed about it was looking up a guide on, like, okay, what the hell do I even run in this raid so that I'm not doing that, so that I'm not pulling the team down and making everyone else fail because I don't know what I'm doing. It's time to look up and make sure that I know what I'm doing, in other words. And I found a build for Pokemon called Iron Hands, and I went out and I leveled them up, and I looked into like how to nowadays you can pretty much cook the Pokemon you want, it seems, because you can like use bottle caps to do hyper training to get the best IVs for them. The only caveat is that they can't pass down hyper trained IVs to eggs, and then you can, you know, give them pills to change their EVs so you don't have to grind them against specific wild Pokemon over and over again. Thank goodness that's been in there for a while though. And then there's also these mints which allows you to change their natures, I think, and then I think there's also ways to change their abilities. So it's, you could just make Pokemon that you want to certain specifications now, and I don't hate that. The thrill of like the hunt, I guess, was exciting before, of like, oh yay, I just got this Pokemon, it's got 5 out of 6 IVs that are the best, and you know, it's gonna be very unlikely I find a 6 out of 6, so this is gonna be my guy probably, but I'm still gonna look out for that 6 out of 6, you know. That was cool before, but it's nice not being left behind, because I'm not grinding for hundreds of hours to find one specific like genetically superior individual, you know what I mean? Instead I can just be like, ah yes, my Croconaw that I've been attached to from the very start of the game, I can make him competitive. That's nice. Then again, maybe you can't change their natures and I'm just thinking of abilities, and maybe there is still some amount of make sure you've got this nature if you want to be absolutely 100% optimal. Either way though, I cooked up an Iron Hands that wasn't actually fully 100% optional, because the guide was make it so good that you can solo it with NPC avatars, and I was like, well, he's most of the way there. Let me just see if I'm not going to be dragging the group down now. Let me see if I can do this in an online group. And we did it! I've got my Mighty Feraligatr, and now there's a Mighty Sceptile, and I need to try and get a Abominate, whatever, what's it called again, like the Primeape evolution, Abominape or something. I need to get one of those leveled and Ivy trained and all this stuff, and as it turns out, that's an endgame kind of gameplay loop I quite enjoy. And yes, it's been a thing for years, because Violet's getting on in years a bit now, but I've just got there and I'm having a pretty good time with it, wouldn't you know. But Pokemon Violet is not the only Pokemon game I've been playing this week. I've also stepped back into Pokemon Brilliant Diamond, just because I really am excited for Fire Red and Leaf Green, and I wanted a more traditional Pokemon game to play without cannibalizing my own experience by going and playing a different copy of, you know, Fire Red and Leaf Green that I already have on a hard drive somewhere. And I am 6 out of 8 gyms down. I think I was 4 out of 8 gyms when I started, so I haven't played that much more of it. But yeah, I've talked about this before. Brilliant Diamond is not the Gen 4 remake that I wanted, but it's the one we've got, and it's the one that I've got. And you know what? It's not the worst game in the world. And once you see past it for the things that it isn't and start playing it for the game that it is, turns out it's still a decent Pokemon game. I do hope, however, and this is something I forgot to mention in my Pokemon Presents wishlist / predictions video, I would like to see some Switch 2 upgrades announced, or Switch 2 free patches announced for some of the older games. I would like to see, obviously, Sword and Shield get a patch, because I love Sword and Shield. I would like to see Pokemon Legends Arceus get a patch. Those are the two I want to see most get a patch for the Switch 2 performance. However, I'm now realizing Brilliant Diamond could also use a patch, and that's kind of funny because you look at it and it's like, I mean, it's not the most demanding game in the world. They're chibi characters. It's not visually interesting. Why would you want it to be like a polished, less than a masterpiece, shall we be kind? It's because I'm playing it, and it's like, there's input lag in that game. I don't know why I never noticed it before, but it's there, and it's distracting, and it's annoying in menus, specifically. And the resolution isn't great. Like, you've got these little chibi guys, but you can see, like, pixelated eyelashes and stuff. And also, it'd be nice if it didn't run at 30 frames a second, if it ran at 60 instead. You would imagine it wouldn't be too difficult to get that working, but I don't know if they care about Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl anymore, especially after the reception that they received. They were pretty well purchased though, they were good sellers, so like all Pokemon games are, so I don't know, maybe they will, maybe I'm living in fairy tale land, I don't know. But yeah, I think whereas I would buy upgrades if I had to for Sword and Shield and Legends Arceus, I don't think I would buy an upgrade for Brilliant Diamond. That would have to be a free patch. They should all be free patches. I know, but I'm not in charge of that, am I? I mean, it's pretty cheap if it's funding the developers' work on the game. Let's stop being angry about video games, how about that? Let's just be complacent with what the corporations shove down our throats. Yes, I hear you. I also have, just tonight, played a little bit more of Pokemon Legends ZA as well. I'm also pretty close to the end of that particular game, and it's made me realize if I finish Brilliant Diamond and I finish Legends ZA, I will have finished every I will have finished every major Pokemon game on the Switch, because then I would have finished Let's Go Eevee, I would have finished Sword, I would have finished Violet, I would have finished Legends Arceus, Legends CA, and Brilliant Diamond. Not in any particular order, but that's what that would be. And that strikes me as quite satisfying, so I think I'm going to work on that. And I really do want to start getting into, like, you know, shiny hunting and hatching eggs of fun Pokemon and sending them in surprise trades to people and stuff like that. I want to do endgame things in these games, and I feel like whenever I'm playing the endgame of an earlier Pokemon game without having finished a later one, I almost feel like I'm wasting my time. Or not wasting my time, but I'm like, you know, I'm not giving the modern Pokemon game its dues. I should be catching up. I've got that FOMO, you know, but hey, maybe I shouldn't care about that. Oh, also on Switch too, before we move away from that, Skyrim got its 60 frames a second patch this week, which I'm very happy about, because I only bought it on the basis of they fixed the input lag and it's an imperfect 30 frames a second now, and I wanted the anniversary edition content and it was on sale and it was cheap for me because it was an upgrade. Have you got all of those caveats? Okay, good. But now they've updated it to 60 frames a second, and as we saw in the Switch eShop charts video I made, very popular right now. I think people are flocking to it now that they've seen it get fixed. And I am still just in general playing quite a bit of Skyrim. I'm actually on like a proper full playthrough instead of just doing what I do a lot of the time, which is I want to play a few hours of Skyrim and then go play something else. No, I'm like 10 hours into the save now, I think, and I have no signs of stopping. I've just unlocked Hendraheim, which is one of the anniversary edition community homes, and it's amazing because, and I know this isn't news to anyone who's modded in a player-made home before, but it's news to me. There's a basement, and down in the basement there's like a ton of mannequins, and there's like weapon placards on the walls for specific like Daedric artifacts, and there's spaces for all the different like claws from the barrows that you pick up and stuff, and then there's like spaces for like basically all the things that you could think of collecting, like the dragon priest masks and stuff. There's somewhere to display them, and that's fucking sick. That gives me not a reason, because I don't need a reason to do it, but that gives me motivation to kind of like go on a perfectionist playthrough of the game on a platform that doesn't even have achievements. So I'm very excited to keep playing Skyrim right now. But okay, let's talk about the fact that I have returned to Final Fantasy XIV for the first time in about 8 months, I think it was. And for anyone who missed my video on this, content creation actually has a part to play in how I've been feeling about that game and why I haven't been playing as much of it as I otherwise might. I talk about it more in the video Adventures in Eorzea is Changing, but basically the long and short of it is I'm really happy that I have these MSQ videos documenting my entire journey from A Realm Reborn all the way up to the Endwalker patch content, and I really regret the idea of stopping making those videos, but I'm so far behind on footage, and I don't particularly enjoy the act of making those specific videos as much as I do other videos on this channel. It actually feels like a bit of a chore, and all of that added up to just every time I played Final Fantasy XIV, I felt bad just knowing I had this mountain of footage that I hadn't edited yet, and every time something interesting happened that I wanted to take a clip of and share my reaction to, I knew that I had this massive uphill battle ahead of me, and I was filling up more storage space than I could realistically keep. So I finally made the decision, not really intending to like get back into Final Fantasy XIV at the time, but I made the decision to unburden myself of that particular series and that footage, and I do really you know, I'm really grateful for anyone who did tune into that series, and obviously the videos that are already up aren't going anywhere, and there will be future videos in that series. It's just going to have a different focus. It's going to be more casual, like Adventures in Azeroth or Tamriel or Gielinor. It's not going to be quite so like MSQ focused, where I'm trying to make sure I'm capturing the major beats of the story and talking about where it's going and my predictions and all this stuff. Instead, like and I'll talk about this in a sec without spoilers, but I've just played through 7.1 and I think I took like 2 or 3 clips, and it feels hugely liberating. And as someone who's doing this for a hobby, if I'm not enjoying it, what's the point? You know what I mean? Apart from, you know, people enjoying the videos. But if I'm being perfectly honest, Adventures in Eorzea has never been a particularly popular series on this channel either. I, like most things I do here, mostly do it for me. But if you did enjoy that series, I'm sorry, and I hope you understand. And I hope you look forward to future episodes within that series, even though they're going to be a little different. But yeah, so this all culminated in me deciding to actually return to Final Fantasy XIV, and I hadn't played any of the MSQ story stuff after 7.0, purely because of all that footage malarkey. And I played through 7.1, and again, I'm not going to say anything, I'm not going to spoil anything, not for Dawntrail, not for Endwalker, not for Shadowbringers, not for Stormblood, not for Heavensward, not for Realm Reborn, okay? You're fine, don't worry about it. What I will say is, I was not expecting much out of a 0.1 story patch, and I did not get much out of a 0.1 story patch, except there were some interesting hooks. But again, that's just setting up what's to come. So another reason I didn't play 7.1's MSQ when it came out is because I've played enough of these 0.1 patches to kind of know that it's not going to really satisfy me or excite me all that much. And so another reason I've been holding back is I just wanted a nice big chunk of MSQ to play through. And I've started hearing people talk about how exciting the latest MSQ is. I don't know when 7.4 came out. It might have been out for a while now. But apparently the story is getting really interesting again, and they're starting to point towards what they're doing next. And I'm not going to say it, but I've heard one sentence which is slightly spoilery, which has made me go, oh, I'd quite like to see what that's about. And so ESO is out temporarily, and Final Fantasy XIV is subbing back in, quite literally. And I've been having a fantastic time getting reacquainted with the game and all that stuff. Samurai, I think it might be one of my favourite jobs, because it's one of the first things I decided to do. I decided to queue up a dungeon on my Samurai job, which is around level 75 at the minute, and it's like riding a bike, you know? Other jobs, it's a bit like, oh, hang on a minute, how does this work again? Although maybe not Dragoon, because I've just spent so much time on Dragoon. But like, I think I just love playing on my Samurai. The gameplay is so satisfying with like the sticker system and stuff, and it's yeah, I don't want to ever switch out my main job or class on Tamara Seraphon, because him being a Dragoon is part of his identity at this point, and I tend to like sticking to one main class in an MMO anyway. But I could see myself maybe switching to Samurai as my main job in the future. I don't know. It's just, I think I have more fun playing PvE content on my Samurai, and to be fair, on my Reaper as well. Reaper's really goddamn fun. But I think there are maybe melee DPS classes I enjoy a little bit more than Dragoon. as heretical as that feels to say, is a Dragoon main. I do love Dragoon as well, of course, but AoE especially feels like a weak point on Dragoon. Maybe not so much at level 100, because you do get some fun options with Nostrand and with some of the extra stuff they've added recently. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like Samurai has more AoE gameplay, and it's like 30 levels below like the end game, so I don't know, shrug. But yeah, I've played through 7.1, I've started 7.2. I'm still not like addicted to the MSQ. It hasn't got its hooks in me completely just quite yet, and I know it's not gonna have hours and hours and hours of narrative content, so maybe I'll take it slow. But I do want to get caught up fairly soon, and then I think I'm gonna want to spend time leveling alternate jobs. I also made a new character, which of course I did, because that's just what I do. But I made a new character because there is a high elf. There is an Elysian lady called Shale in the main story right now, who I have a small crush on, and I decided to make my very own Elysian lady, and she's going to be my bard character, I think. Although I already had a character lined up to be my bard character, so I don't really know. And also, I don't just want to play through the MSQ over and over and over and over and over again. I did have designs of, like, playing her. She's called Efemi Portelaine, I believe that's how you pronounce it. I made up the name, I should know how to pronounce it. It's a lore-friendly name. In fact, the last name is one of the randomly generated ones. But I came up with Efemi, okay? Efemi? I was gonna go Femi, but it felt like Efemi would be a bit better. But yeah, I kind of toyed around with the idea of, like, she could be a character I just play through the MSQ on, but I've already started that with Zaraya Zephyr, and she was originally, like, my I don't have to take clips and react to things on this character, which is another, hey, maybe I shouldn't have been working myself quite so hard for this hobby kind of thing. But yeah, I have 5 characters now. One of them is my main character, Tamara Seraphon. One of them is a character who's played through a Realm Reborn base game, and I got to the Realm Reborn patches and kind of went, ugh. I actually was skipping through the story content on that because that was not going to be a story-based character. Then I have Zaraya Zephyr, who I was going to replay the MSQ on originally, but I've picked up and dropped that project enough times that I'm wondering if I should just start over on another character. Then I've got Juliara Anora, who is a Mikote archer, funnily enough, who I was going to be playing with a friend, but then I dropped off the game and we never seem to be playing it at the same time anymore, so I don't know what I'm going to use her for, but I do want to keep her because she looks really cool. And then there's now Efemi Portelaine, whose name I apparently pronounce with a different accent every time I say it. And I don't know what I'm going to use her for. I just wanted a why do I keep saying high elf? I just wanted an Elysian lady. Who was kind of like a pretty tomboy lady, and she's pretty cool. I do kind of wish you could just make alternate characters that are like gameplay focused and can just be at end game, or at the very least at the start of the most recent expansion, without having to worry about playing through the story every single time, because I don't want to drive the story into the ground because I love it so much. And I guess you can technically buy boosts on the store, but they're expensive, so I'm not going to do that. I wish paid services were free. There you go, there's my hot take. Anyway, is there anything else I want to talk about in this surprisingly long episode of Weekly Waypoint? The golf went on for longer than I anticipated, but luckily the gaming industry shat itself this week, so there was enough to talk about. I guess we just got to talk about how Luigi is a cheating bastard. He is a menace, and you should not bring him to your games of golf, and he will make you feel bad about yourself, and I hope that he steps on a Lego piece when he's trying to get to bed at night and wakes up Daisy, and she's very mad at him. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this episode of Weekly Waypoint. I'll catch you in whatever I make next. Those are the noises I make, by the way, when I play golf. Fuck you, Luigi!